All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're unpacking Arundhati Roy's absolute masterpiece, The God of Small Things. And we're really going to dig into the dense, invisible, and honestly brutal systemic forces governing this one family's tragic destiny in Kerala, India. Because, this isn't just a story about a family. It's this profound look at the invisible rules dictating human behavior and the devastating fallout when you actually dare to break them. Now, the quote, the laws that lay down who should be loved and how much. Think about that. Everything in this narrative, every tiny micro interaction, every massive political rally, every secret glance, it all revolves around this one terrifying concept, the love laws. These are the ancient, totally unspoken rules that lay down who you can love, how you can love them, and exactly how much. They literally dictate the absolute boundaries of existence. And as we're going to see, crossing those boundaries, it comes with a terrible, terrible price. So, our roadmap for today. First, the end is the beginning. Second, inside the IMM house. Third, the weight of history. Fourth, the political backdrop. And finally, number 5, breaking the love laws. All right, moving to part 1. The end is the beginning, the tragedy of 1969. So, to really ground ourselves, we have to remember the narrative doesn't move in a straight line, right? It kind of circles this central, unspeakable trauma. We've got 1962, when the twins Estha and Rahel are born. Then boom, 1969. Their half-English cousin Sophie Mole dies, and it just shatters the family. At her funeral, the adults won't even look at the twins. And immediately after, Estha is returned, just packed up and sent away to live with his father. Fast forward 23 years to 1992, Rahel returns to a brooding, humid IMM, only to find her brother has completely stopped talking. He's totally withdrawn from the world. And the real tragedy of that separation is rooted in their incredibly profound bond. Dizygotic twins meaning 2 eggs, but Estahap and Rahel thought of themselves together as me, and only separately, individually, as we or us. They didn't just see themselves as siblings. They shared memories they had absolutely no business having. I mean, Rahel literally remembers the physical taste of a tomato sandwich that Esta ate on a train she wasn't even on. So you can imagine this deep psychological fusion makes a 23-year separation just devastating. It's essentially a tear right down the middle of a single soul. Let's move to part 2, inside the IMM house, the family ecosystem. We really need to peel back the doors of the IMM house because the adults living inside this pressure cooker are basically walking time bombs of historical and psychological baggage. You've got Amu, the twins' divorced mother, carrying what the book calls an unsafe edge. It's this mix of the reckless rage of a suicide bomber with a mother's tenderness. Then there's baby Kachama, the grandaunt, completely consumed by the bitter fear of losing her status. She's essentially lived her life backwards. Papachi, the grandfather, haunted and bitter because a newly discovered creeping moth wasn't named after him, and Chaco, the uncle. He claims to be a Marxist, but ironically plays the feudal landlord, totally trapped in these romantic ideals of Anglophilia. And nothing captures this family's dysfunction better than Paradise Pickles and Preserves, their actual family business. Get this, their banana jam was legally banned by the Food Products Organization. Why? Because it had an ambiguous, unclassifiable consistency. It wasn't quite jelly, wasn't quite jam. And the irony there is just brilliant, isn't it? The family's inability to legally classify their jam perfectly mirrors their fatal inability to stay within the rigid social boundaries of their world. They are all, in their own tragic ways, completely unclassifiable. Which brings us to part 3, the weight of history, colonial alienation. Because listen, this family's neuroses, they don't exist in a vacuum. They are deeply, deeply tied to India's colonial past. Chaco introduces this concept of the history house. It's a metaphorical home where your ancestors are whispering inside, but the living are locked out. They can only look through the windows and see shadows. They're trapped as prisoners of war in the psychological war of dreams that makes them despise themselves and desperately adore their conquerors. They're left totally unanchored. To put all this into perspective for the twins, Chaco scales the entire 4.6 billion-year-old Earth down to a 46-year-old woman. And when you think about it like that, for 45.99 years, the Earth was just, evolving oceans, animals, and dinosaurs. All of human civilization, every war, every empire, every single rigid love law has only existed for the last 2 hours of her life. 2 hours! It's just a staggering reminder of how incredibly insignificant our suffocating social rules actually are on a geological scale. Now for part 4, the political backdrop, Kerala in 1969. So the year is 1969, and Kerala is an absolute powder keg. You've got this intense friction. On one side, the wealthy, traditional, estate-owning, feudal Syrian Christians, basically landlords running businesses like Paradise Pickles. And on the exact opposite side, you have the rising tide of Marxist labor unions, including Naxalite factions, who are actively demanding a total social and economic revolution. The old world of inherited wealth is colliding head-on with a massive, organized demand for structural change. When the family's sky blue Plymouth literally gets stopped in its tracks by thousands of marchers, what are those marchers actually demanding? Well, objectively speaking, they're fighting for very specific structural reforms. They want a 1-hour lunch break during grueling 11-and-a-half-hour workdays. They want increased daily wages for both men and women. And absolutely crucially, they are demanding an end to being addressed by degrading, untouchable caste names. And to really grasp the weight of the word untouchable, we have to look at the historical reality of the Paravan caste. Historically, Paravans were actually forced to crawl backwards with a broom to sweep away their own footprints, literally just to prevent a touchable person from accidentally stepping in one and being defiled. They even had to cover their mouths when speaking to divert their polluted breath. That is the inescapable, brutal social hierarchy that Velutha, who is this brilliant carpenter working at the family's factory, was born into. Which leads us to the climax, Part 5, Breaking the Love Laws, the Ultimate Transgression. This is where the micro-level family tragedy violently smashes into those macro-level systemic forces. As the book says, it was a time when the unthinkable became thinkable, and the impossible really happened. The love laws, those absolute boundaries we talked about earlier, are broken. Amu, a touchable Syrian Christian, and Velutha, an untouchable Paravan, cross the ultimate line. They fall in love. And this triggers a massive, catastrophic reaction from a society that is terrified of change. The fallout is just swift and totally brutal. History essentially collects its dues through violence and trauma. Velutha meets a horrifying fate, young Sophie Mole tragically dies, and for the twins who witnessed it all, the trauma is permanent. It manifests as this inescapable smell of sick, sweet old roses on a breeze. It's literally the lingering scent of history itself, of a society violently crushing anyone who dares to step out of line. So, seeing how the love laws and the crushing weight of history completely shattered the IMNM house, I want to leave you with a question. How do we navigate the history houses of our own lives? I mean, are we all just unconsciously following invisible rules written for us centuries before we were even born? How much of your life is truly your choice? Take a moment to think about that. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the rules, and I'll catch you next time.